Hello folks, this episode may contain adult themes and swear words, mainly because I can't be asked to edit them out anymore. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Top 2 Inches Rugby podcast summer special following the British and Irish Lions on the tour of South Africa. Yes, the first test has taken place. Unfortunately, Ollie will not be here tonight to review the test with me. He and my schedules just haven't again linked in together this week. So I am going to be flying solo. It possibly means that this episode will not be as long as last week's 100-minute mammoth session that we went through. You'll possibly be quite glad about that. But anyway, I'll be doing my best to review the first test, as I said, check in on the news from in and around the game and anything else that might take my fancy to chat about. Anyway, I've waffled on enough. Let's just crack on with this episode. Okay, so before we get on to everything Lions, let's just take a little look over the news that has been hitting the headlines from the BBC. Obviously, currently the Olympic Games are going on, and Great Britain team managed to reach the semi-finals, where unfortunately they lost to New Zealand quite badly. I did get to see the game, and to be honest with you, New Zealand just looked like a different level of class. To be fair, New Zealand will have gone on to face Fiji in the final, but Fiji have actually already beaten New Zealand and have claimed back-to-back gold medals at the Olympics. Great Britain team took on Argentina in the bronze medal playoff, and unfortunately they were beaten by Argentina 17-12. So unfortunate for those guys, but a good effort to get that far. I think last year they were actually in the final against Fiji, if I remember. Well, not last year, 4 years ago, they were in the final against Fiji. So they've, not got as far as they did last time, but they still had a good showing. The female seven starts on tomorrow morning, as this has been recorded on the Wednesday evening. So good luck to the Great Britain ladies team over in Japan. Fingers crossed that you get a little bit further than the men's side. Other news, Leicester bound Kevin Sinfield is going to be leaving Leeds Rhinos early. He's come to a mutual agreement with the club, and I think he just pretty much wants to get in there, replace Mike Ford as the defence coach and get the ball rolling with the Tigers and hopefully get their progress next season, defence-wise, even better. Sale have re-signed their former academy player, Simon McIntyre from Wasps. He's 30-year-old, has gone back to Sale where he started his career, coming up through the academy. So good luck to him. Sale have got quite a few decent players in terms of props. Tommy Taylor is also obviously going from Wasps as well, rejoining Sale. So that's good news for Sale. It's definitely strengthening their front row there. Was there anything else in the news? No, is the answer. I don't think there is. It's pretty much dominated by the Lions and the Olympics. So let's just crack on to the main event, which is obviously the first test between the British and Irish Lions and South Africa. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to obviously look at the first test between the British and Irish Lions and South Africa, which, as I said, took place in Cape Town on the weekend. Really, really enjoyed this game, and the old adage of it's a game of two halves certainly took hold in this game. The first half, the Lions just did not seem to be at the races at all. Again, South Africa, very much like in the A game, came out on top, dominating all aspects of the first half. I think possibly the Lions maybe were level in terms of parity in the scrummaging, but they just looked like they were off the boil, completely. It was really difficult for them to get into the game. No necessarily sort of tries from South Africa, but they certainly started building their lead. Lions were giving away the penalties. Henry Pollard obviously was knocking a few over. Lots of silly mistakes. Elliot Daly, bless him, he took an absolute pasting of a tackle from Am, the centre from South Africa. Initially, I thought, actually, does that need to be looked at? I wasn't sure if he'd wrapped his arms enough. Hit him quite level in the chest and certainly put down a marker against Elliot Daly, basically saying, here I am, fella, what you kind of got, sort of thing. But no, that didn't need reviewing. It was a fair tackle. And yeah, just I think also just not listening to the referee again, not one to kind of focus on Elliot Daly, but there was a couple of occasions where he was told by the referee to let the ball go, tackle was made, and he continued and ripped the ball out, which then just basically gave the advantage to South Africa and obviously let them build their and establish their lead. What I should have said was, prior to the start of the game, obviously South Africa hadn't selected their strongest front row. They were leaving these guys on the bench. So obviously Kitsoff, Mulhern, and the hooker, whose name has completely gone out of my head, were all left on the bench, and were referred to as the bomb squad. I don't know exactly what they were going to do when they come on, explode or something. But yeah, so and to be fair, the starting front row did well, but I think, like I said, there was definite parity between the two scrums. What seemed to be happening for the Lions is that they just weren't making inroads. They weren't making gain line breaks. They were getting stopped by the South African defence. And they just really struggled to get into the game. So anyway, the first half finished 12-3. Elliot Daly and Dan Biggar both missing kicks. It could have potentially been 12-9 in the break. And that might have looked a little bit more kind of even, but it wasn't to be. Anyway, the Lions obviously went in at half-time. Warren Gatlin and his team, well, I don't know what they said, but the Lions came out literally from the kickoff and just took control of the game, really. A really lovely catch by Mario Toji from the kickoff, securing the ball. Ali Price then sticking it down the wing. Van der Merwe knocking 7 bells of shit out of the number 8, Quagga Smith, and then I think they got a penalty from that, kicked it down to the corner, catch and drive, Luke Cowan-Dickie over the line. The Lions established themselves quite early on in the second half and got themselves right back into the game. There was quite a lot of controversy before the game with obviously Marius Jonker being kind of put in as the TMO for the game. Poor bloke, realistically, if he went in favour of the Lions, then probably all of South Africa will hate him. And obviously if he went in favour of South Africa, then the Lions would have just basically been saying that, he's favouring his home country. And he, unfortunately for the poor bloke, he was called on in a couple of occasions. One of the main ones being the disallowed try from Willie le Roux. South Africa kind of broke out down the left-hand side. I actually thought it was a forward pass from Diolande to Am. And at that point, I actually said to myself, that's a forward pass. But that was deemed to be okay. And then the kick ahead by Am went to the back with Willie le Roux outpacing everybody and getting a try. It was obviously called back and it was really quite close. And realistically could have gone either way. Interesting question. Obviously, the referee had awarded the try, so on-field decision was a try. Was there any reason why the try couldn't be disallowed? Sorry. And obviously, Marius Jonker made the decision that Willie le Roux was slightly in front of Am when he made the kick, and therefore was offside, and the try was disallowed. Courtney Laws came into his own in the second half, coupled with Mario Toji just being an absolute menace around the field, putting in tackles, stealing the ball, and he was relentless throughout the game and actually earned himself the man of the match. Another occasion, I think Hamish Watson came on for Curry and put in a bit of a tip tackle on one of the South African players. Again, I think it was Willie le Roux, who then later went off, I'm assuming with some sort of concussion or head injury. He quite literally just lifted le Roux over the horizontal and sort of not drilled him into the ground, but didn't exactly put him down particularly well. And obviously all the South Africans were sort of saying it needed to be checked. Wasn't checked, it was just given as a penalty. Really surprising decision there from the referee, and actually why the TMO didn't sort of step in and say, hang on a second, that's, he's lifted him above the horizontal. In all fairness, Hamish Watson should have been yellow carded. I've got no arguments with that. He should have unfortunately gone to the bin. Luckily for him, obviously he didn't, and he was able to stay on the field. I think potentially if he had gone off, then that could have been a very different ending to the game. Dan Biggar, obviously, he went off with a HIA, which meant that Owen Farrell moved into the fly half position. Elliot Daly was brought back into the centre position, and the game kind of played itself out. I think the Lions, to be fair, let's be under no illusion, they were lucky. Were they lucky? Yeah, I suppose they were lucky in a way. Like I said, if certain things and rubber the green and other decisions had gone their way, it could have been a lot more, difficult for them, and potentially South Africa kind of would have won the game. I think just rolling back a little bit, at half time, the South African coach, with Erasmus's help as the water boy, still don't understand how he can be the water boy and quite clearly giving out instructions on the field. But anyway, brought on the entire front row, changed the front row at half time. The bomb squad came on. And realistically, they got outplayed. They just didn't come off the bench and make any kind of impression. Whereas the British and Irish Lions boys came off the bench, and that actually kind of upped the level. Mako Vunipola coming on the loose head. Now, I'm not saying that he was dominating the scrum, but he certainly brought stability, didn't take a step back, and was more kind of evident around the field in what he was doing. And I think that it was definitely a pre-planned decision by Erasmus and the coaching staff to do that. And personally, I think it backfired. I think in the last episode, Ollie and I both sort of said that we felt that South Africa weren't fit enough for the game. And I would suggest that by about 60 minutes, they were absolutely out on their feet. They didn't seem to have anything left in the tank, to be fair. And I think also you've got to take into consideration they have had COVID ripping through the team. You don't know what the impact of COVID has had on the players and their fitness and their ability. So again, all these kind of contributing factors moved everything going forward towards the Lions and obviously getting the victory in the first test. Looking ahead to next week, Gatland has made some changes, some interesting changes. I think everybody probably would expect the fact that Elliot Daly has been dropped to the bench. Who should they have gone for? Aki, Farrell or Chris Harris? Well, Gatland's gone for Chris Harris in the centre. That doesn't surprise me. I've really enjoyed Chris Harris on this tour. I think he's been one of the better players. Yes, in the A game, he obviously got sidestepped by Cheslin Colby and made to look a little bit silly in the defensive work. But I think he would have taken that on board and would have learnt from that mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. Dan Biggar has managed to get through his HIA, so he stays in the starting 10 position. Farrell stays on the bench. Vunipola is coming into the front row for Sutherland. Wyn Jones, obviously, I think is still injured because he would have potentially been starting with Vunipola on the bench. I think, like I said, Mako did enough to coming off the bench to solidify himself in the starting lineup. Will Rory Sutherland bring any kind of dynamic changes when he comes off the bench? If he comes off the bench, I'm not sure he does. I think he'll just put in a good performance, a solid performance, and potentially at that point, that's what the Lions will need. What else? Who else? Karen Dickey remains at hooker. Ken Owen's still on the bench. Hamish Watson. He's been dropped out of the squad completely. Talupe Faletau has come back in and is on the bench. Now, I've obviously been a little bit critical of Toby over the course of this series. I don't think he's been playing particularly well. And I thought Jack Conan put in a pretty decent performance in the first test, and that's possibly why he's kept his place on the bench. Now, I think Tagburn and Toby Faletau on the bench makes it more kind of dynamic coming off the bench. I think if you have Watson, you would obviously swap a scavenger like Curry out. But I think realistically, when the Boks are kind of, starting to flag a little bit in the second test, hopefully, as they were last week, bringing those two big lumps of men on will cause them even more trouble. Interesting from South Africa, the coaching team, with obviously number one water boy Erasmus, has decided to start with the bomb squad and finish with the other front row, who I actually thought last week with a better front row. I don't think he has made... Jasper Weiss. So the Leicester number 8 has been brought into the back row, starting at number 8, so congratulations to him. Quagga Smith was dominated, I think, in the first test, to be fair, and that is why he is now dropped to the bench. And Van Straten, the other Leicester flanker, has also been brought into the bench, and they've gone for a 6-2 split. So I don't think we're going to see South Africa changing their game plan at all. I had a little read of sort of South African press, watched a few press conferences by the South African coach, and I don't think he thought they were too far from the point from being what they needed to be. I think they're going to keep the game plan simple. I can't see them changing a great deal. They're going to just, the big old boys, they'll kind of box style, smash it up and see what happens, I guess, with Pollard kicking to the corners maybe, kicking in behind. I think personally they need to get Cheslin Kobe and Mapimpi into the game a lot more. They didn't even I don't even think they got the ball in the first test that often. I don't recall when you listen to the commentators, you know if someone's having a good game because their name's getting mentioned all the time. I don't recall either of the names being really mentioned on a great deal in that test. So I think they need to try and get their game players into the game a lot more. But I think that also kind of fits in with Colby needs to come looking for the ball. He seemed to stay out on the wings. The Lions were obviously, taking an aerial battle and coming out on top on that one. I am a bit surprised not to see Josh Adams in the team. Liam Williams has obviously also been dropped from the bench to have, Daly in there. I get that Daly covers a number of positions, but I just don't think Daly's form, and I'm sure Brutal Bob, if he was here having a chat to me now, would definitely say Daly's shit to get him out of the team. But Gatlin is the god. He knows what he's doing. I think he proved everybody not wrong in his selection, but proved his selection for the first test was right. And it's horses for courses, isn't it? It's different games, different tactics. Maka, like I said, playing himself into the starting lineup. Chris Harris again in the centre. It's just all building for a fantastic second test. What do I want to see? I think the Lions need to play pretty much a similar game. I think they need to start a lot better than they did in the first test. They were very slow off the blocks and obviously didn't really get into the game into the second half. I think they need to build that score. They need to build that scoreboard, get points on the board, and then fingers crossed things again, once the Springboks start to tire a little bit in the second half, could potentially come a lot easier for them. But we will just have to wait and see. Do I want the Lions to basically take the series to, go into the third test 2-0 up? Absolutely I do. But wouldn't it be fantastic if South Africa did, fingers crossed they don't, pull it back to 1-1 and make that third test an absolute humdinger with the Lions coming out on top and taking the series 2-1. Let's just see what happens. I literally can't wait till the weekend now. It's going to be fantastic. So that was episode 5 of our summer special Lions tour to South Africa. I pretty much change the name as we go along each episode. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as we did bringing it to your ears. We will be back next week to review the second test and check out any news from in and around the game. Once again, we're available on all major platforms such as Anchor, Spotify, YouTube and Apple Podcast. I am over on Twitter at Top 2 Inches RP. Ollie is over on Insta on the same guys. So go over, give us a follow, give us a like, get us out there, and we'll continue to bring you interesting shambles of shit every week in terms of our podcast. Anyway, we'll be back next week. Have a good week and we will catch you soon.